Hello, yes, it's Joe here for Joyrider TV, live from the Joyrider TV studios here in Vasiliki on the Greek island of Lefkos. And yes, we are here for some more scintillating Q&A. You ask the questions and I'll do what I can to provide the answers. Yeah, this is being recorded live, but it will be available to watch afterwards. So if you are watching this when it's not live, how will you know if it's live? Well, I think it will actually say live in the corner if it is live when you're watching it. But if you are watching it later on, you've got any questions, then just put them in the comments below. Sorry, a bit of reflection in the spectacles there. And I will either answer your questions in the comments or in next week's Q&A session. There we go. So yes, I have got plenty in the preloaded arena today. And I'm just going to steam straight in with the first preloaded question. And this one comes from Matt 13 Williams, who says, together with my regular sailing partner, we come in close to the 200 kilogram mark. That is powerful. Have you got any good tips to keep the lee bow from diving when the wind is up? It's a problem that I'm having difficulty dealing with, and quite a few high-speed wipeouts have been going down. And the Hobie 16 is starting to lose its fun factors. Oh dear. So we better do something about this. So was this when sailing downwind or just generally to stop the bows from digging in? Okay. Just before we answer this question, let's just say hello to everybody who's tuning in. Hello, Chris in Texas. Great to have you on board. And we've got Rich. All right, Rich, how you doing? Rich is, of course, the president of the International Hobie Class Association. It really is great to have you with us, even if it's not for very long. We've got Nick in Bulgaria. We've got Thomas in Germany. Everybody is tuning in. We've got Marco. I would, if I had to guess, I'd say in Italy, but I could be wrong. And then we've got Patrick. Could be anywhere. I'm going for the USA. We've got Reinhold, Germany as a guess. In the live chat, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, Patrick is in the USA. We've got Mark and Janet, who I would think either Germany or the Netherlands. Oh, and we've got John Claude in Trinidad. All right. I'm going to get on with answering this question about how not to stick the nose in. All right. So we can do a lot, firstly, with what we'll call trim. So if we draw our points of sail diagram like we may have seen before. So we've got on the upwind point of sail here, all of the forces from the wind are pushing the bow, are pushing backwards on the boat. So the wind is blowing the boat this way, which is actually going to be lifting the bows. So there are very, very few, very little chance of sticking the bows in on the upwind leg unless you are sailing in big waves. Now, let's just talk about sticking the nose in on the upwind. If you're sailing upwind, and let's say you're not being affected by waves, and you're sticking the nose in, then what is actually happening is you're not really sailing upwind. Because what can happen on the upwind course pretty easily, if you're watching your telltales on the jib, to define what your upwind course is. So your telltales will be like this. If you're watching the telltales and it's windy, if you're keeping both telltales, so if you've got a little window for them, it would look like this. If you're watching both telltales and it's windy and you're keeping them both flying straight back, what is actually going to happen is you're going to be entering some sort of vicious circle of speed and apparent wind. So by keeping them both flying straight back, you're going to be sailing very fast, or you're going to have a good bit of speed on, which is going to increase your induced wind, the wind that you create by going forwards. So this wind is going to increase. As that wind increases, our apparent wind, the wind that we're actually sailing on, is going to be coming round more from here, more round to here, which means to keep the telltales flying straight back, you're actually going to have to turn the boat more away from the wind to keep the inside telltale flying straight back. So you'll come on to a point of sail like this. And then what's going to happen when you get on this point of sail, keeping those telltales flying? You're going to go even faster, which means that your induced wind is going to get even greater because you're going faster. So once again, your apparent wind, the wind that you're sailing the boat on, is going to come more round like here. So what do we do to keep the inside telltale flying? We have to turn away from the wind more. We do get this quite a lot here in Vasiliki, so this is how people might think that they're sailing upwind, but they're actually sailing on a beam reach because they're just following this sort of ever increasing amount of induced wind by going faster and faster, meaning that if you want to keep the inside telltale flying straight back, you have to keep bearing away, because otherwise it's not going to keep flying straight back. So if you were sailing in an upwind position on the boat, so if you had the helm and the crew trapezing fairly far forwards here, that for a 16, that's fairly far forwards, I'd say. Although, yeah. Then you will stick the nose in and you'll probably flip the boat over. So what can we do about this? So if we're wanting to sail upwind, this is also going to help you to get to where it is that you want to go. Then with the telltales on the jib, we want to allow the telltale that's on the inside to lift. Depending on the amount of wind, if it's just enough wind to start lifting the hull, then with the jib sheeted in tight, we want to have the inside telltale lifted to about somewhere like 45 degrees, because what that is showing is that we're sailing as close to the wind as possible, and we're not just getting carried away with this speed multiplier kind of effect that could be happening just here. Better lighting. Yeah, so we're allowing that inside telltale to lift. If there's a lot more wind, and like, let's say we're double trapezing, flying the hull, we've got the downhaul on full, strong wind, then we actually want to have this telltale lifting almost to the vertical position, because even if we have it at 45 degrees, we're going to be entering into this situation if we're wanting to keep it in that position. So we're stopping following the telltales to a certain degree in the very strong winds on the upwind. And we're more sailing by feeling the boat. We're squeezing the boat up towards the wind as much as we can. But when we feel the speed of the boat is significantly slowing, and perhaps at that point, the front part of the jib would actually start just flapping a little bit like that, then that's when we're too close. We need to just edge it back. So there's a lot of feel involved in the upwind. Okay, so that is if you are sticking the nose in when you think you're sailing upwind. That's a good start, I think. So if you're sailing on a reaching course across the wind and you're sticking the nose in a lot. All right, let's get us on a reaching course here. So for those who have just joined us, we're talking about windy conditions, not sticking the nose in. Nobody really wants to stick the nose in. All right, so the first thing we can look at is where are we going to position ourselves on the boat? It may seem obvious, but if this bow is going into the water, going down, the further we get away from that bow is going to help to stop it from going in. So we'll get further back. If you're single trapezing, what you could do is have the helm sat in this back corner of the trampoline, foot under the toe strap for security, and then the crew could get right to the back on the trapeze, and that will be a lot of fun. And you'll really be doing a lot to lever that bow up. You're keeping the weight as far back on the boat as possible. Of course, if we're double trapezing, then we could do what you might have seen in some of the videos on the channel, is having the helm and the crew trapezing as far back as possible. If it looks like by standing as far back as possible, the boat is popping a bit of a wheelie and the bows are coming up a bit, perhaps you've over trimmed it and you could just move forward slightly. But again, that is more something you can find out with the feeling. It's always better if it's a strong wind and you're sailing on a reach or a downwind course to have the weight a little bit further back than optimal, so that you've got a little bit of margin for if you get a big gust, the bows are going to go and you don't need to be quite as quick to jump to the back of the boat. So there we go. What else can we do? We can probably do a bit better with our sail settings as well. So what can we do with the sail settings? First thing, if it's really windy, we want to have the downhaul cranked on, because that's going to flatten the sail, reducing some of the power. It's also going to bring the fullest part of the sail, which is what we're going to call the center of effort. It's going to bring the center of effort down in the sail, which means there's less shape in the top. It's like the boat is going to have a lower center of gravity, which means there's going to be less force trying to make us capsize. So crank the downhaul on as much as you can. And then what we want to do is we want to sail with the main sheet quite tight, but to allow us to sail with the main sheet quite tight, we want to let the traveler out. So you might have on a beam reach, if you're double trapezing at the back, you might have the traveler all the way out to the towards the end of the track. We never actually want to put it all the way to the end of the track so it's touching the end, because if you did that and you jibed, you could break your traveler car. So that is why you should have a knot in the traveler control line to stop it from going all the way to the end. If you have it so that it stops, this is Joseph's ruler. Thank you, Joseph. If you have it so it stops, I don't know, about 15 centimeters from the end, that is enough. That will do you. And it will give you that peace of mind that you're not going to break your traveler car. So put the traveler further out and then play the main sheet from that position. It's going to be a lot easier. You're going to feel a lot more in control, and you're not going to be putting the bows in as much. Because also we've got a lot on this, as you could probably tell. If we're sailing with a loose main sheet, like if we kept the traveler in the middle, we'd have to have quite a loose main sheet, which means the bottom of the sail will be quite close in. Can we draw this? We'll try. So if this is the back of the boat hulls, the bottom of the sail is going to be quite close in, but then the top is going to be going out a lot if this is the leech, which means there's the mast. Okay, maybe the picture doesn't make too much sense, but what it means, by letting the top of the sail come out so much, that's going to be a lot more forcing the front of the boat down. So keeping the sail in a bit tighter is going to help us to keep it under control. Of course, if we're doing this with the mainsail, we're going to want to do this with the jib as well. So we'll put, if you've got jib travelers, we'll put the jib travelers all the way out as well. And the crew has a big role to play if it's really windy. If the crew in a gust is able to release a bit of jib, this is really going to help to keep the bows out as well. So I think there are a few things there that are going to help. But the main one, get the weight to the back, get the traveler out, and that is going to help a lot. So I hope that helps, Matt. Good luck. And I hope you don't get put off sailing your cat sailing anymore when it's windy. It is meant to be fun, of course. All right, let's just see who's checking in. We have got Chris says, Chris in Texas, like it was said in the movie Jaws, you're going to need a bigger boat. I think that's in relation to the 200 kilograms on a Hobie 16. But I can tell you 200 kilograms on a Hobie 16 with a lot of wind is a lot of fun. I think in a light wind with that much weight on the boat, you probably couldn't expect it to go too quickly. It'll still be fun. But when it gets windy, that's when you can really pin that bad boy down. We have Jens on board. Hello, Jens. Great to see you. And we got Max on board. He's just coming in from Simsey Sailing, 12 knots and sunshine, 5 degrees. Max is, I don't know, it's crazy how cold you're going to take it in Germany, but well done. I'm definitely taking one for the team. Right, we've got Scott there showing up today wearing my Tequila Sunrise Joyrider hoodie. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Scott has got a beautiful Tequila Sunrise Joyrider hoodie, which you can get from totaljoyrider.com. Also, you may see I've got the woolly hat on. Very good if you've got a hairstyle like mine, as in you haven't got any hair. Otherwise, I do find the chilly head is on the cards. So totaljoyrider.com. Thanks, Scott, for the reminder to give it the little plug. All right, we've got USA for the win. I think that's Mo. Listen to Joe, guys. You'll win races. I'm not guaranteeing it, but maybe I can help you not to capsize, how to succeed in more tacks. And I hope, by the way, I hope everybody's checked out the trapezing video that I put out on Wednesday. There was so many clips from over the years went into that video. So as well as it being very informative and you could learn something, it's also a good look at the evolution of what's been going on Joyrider TV. All right, we've got Ryan there in Maui, in Maui, who we looked at Ryan's boat in Show Us Your Cat, of course. Great to have you with us, Ryan. Oh, we've got Hans on board as well. Most impressive experience. Well, I should think so. All right, we've got Hobie Cat. I think that's Ollie. Hello from Hamburg in North Germany. All right, and Patrick, who is in the USA, he's got, I believe this is a question. We'll be storing mast on the beach this year. How well does Spectra / Dyneema trapeze lines hold up to UV? Should I swap them for wire? No, I don't think there's any need to swap the Dyneema trapeze lines for wire ones. We've been on our FX ones we've got here, we've been using the same trapeze wires that do come as standard from Hobie Cat Europe. And those trapeze lines, I think some of them are, don't tell anyone, but I think they might be in their 4th or 5th season. And obviously here in Greece, we're getting a lot of UV and they've been absolutely fine. I think the good thing with the Dyneema rigging and trapeze lines and ropes is that it's going to give you a bit more of a clue before it's going to snap. Whereas your traditional steel rigging wire is just going to snap with no warning at all, because where it's actually getting weak is right at the joint. So I would say there's no benefit to going back to steel to wire trapeze lines on your boat if you have had the Dyneema trapeze lines on there for a significant amount of time, like I would say more than 3 or 4 or 5 years, let's say, then maybe it's worth taking a look at replacing them. And it is something you could do yourself. You can buy the Dyneema if you are into doing stuff and have got the time. You can buy the Dyneema, get yourself a FID kit from Malcheski Composites in Wisconsin. Very nice FID kits there. And then you can actually splice your own trapeze lines. It's very satisfying and it's a lot cheaper than getting everything made by somebody else. So there are some thoughts. All right, Jens, see you again in Vasiliki on the 4th of July. Woohoo! Independence Day, baby. I know that because of the movie. Yes, great. It would be great to see you, Jens. All right, Ryan says, just a reminder that Joe has an affiliate program where he can benefit from all of us sailing and getting new parts. Check out the links below. Thanks very much, Ryan. Yeah, the winter is long and times are tough. That's why I'm having to wear a woolly hat indoors. Very good. All right, we've got Nick. Hello from the USA. Great to have you with us, Nick. All right, Scott says, watched a video of a Hobie 18 single-handed. He capsized and appeared to right it himself. Is an 18 easier to right than a 16? I would say no, because you've got more weight in the hull. So I've seen a video which, when I was doing the ever so slightly frustrating research on the writing pole, about 30 people all sent me the same video of a guy with a Hobie 18 who'd made a really effective writing pole, much better than mine, and it worked really well. But the thing is, when you're capsized, if this is, how would this be? Upside down. Boom. All right. So the Hobie 18, in theory, should take more weight to right than the Hobie 16, because what you've got working against you when you're writing the capsize, there is the rope going like that, is if this is your pivot point, so everything on this side of the pivot point is trying to pull the boat down. Everything on this side is trying to pull the boat up, if that makes sense. So what we've got on the 18, it's got a longer mast than the 16. So there's more weight there and more leverage with that weight, which is trying to stop the boat from coming upright. But also the hulls on the Hobie 18 are much heavier than on a Hobie 16. So having this hull over here is really working against us when writing the capsize. Yeah, so I have to see that video to see what the crack was there. It might be, but it was quite windy. I think if it's above 25 knots, doesn't matter what you're sailing, you can ride the boat on your own. Should be fairly easy with a little bit of technique. But if the wind was lighter, I would be interested to see that. Thank you. All right, we've got Damien on board in the Galapagos. And I've actually got the next preloaded question, Damien. You're not going to believe it. It is on my list right here. It is your question from last week. He says, this is definitely a great way to start a Friday. I would agree. I quite enjoy these sessions myself. And once again, it is pizza night. Tonight, it has become a thing. So there we go. I think we've got pizza and a bit of Spider-Man. Yeah, very nice. All right, Damien says, this was a question from last week, which we didn't quite have time to answer. He said, any tips for changing the mast base on a getaway? I wouldn't be surprised if you've already done it, but should I just change it? Any tips on stepping the mast on a getaway? Thanks. Greetings from the Galapagos Islands. Yeah, so when you're putting the mast up and down, I'm guessing that the getaway has got the same mast step as a Hobie 15, Hobie Pacific, Hobie Tiger, where you've got a ball on the post that goes through the beam. And then the bottom of the mast is kind of shaped to fit, the mast base is shaped to fit onto the ball. Now, what is pretty standard with this system is the main concern when dropping or putting up the mast on the boat is the mast base jumping off the ball or wherever it locates as you're putting it up or down. If that jumps off, then it is a little bit of a drama, especially if somebody's got a Volvo parked behind your boat and it mast comes down on the roof of the car. But on these sort of boats from Hobie, I believe if you have got this, then there should be a hole where a bolt goes through like this, which goes underneath the ball, which is meant to stop the mast base from being able to lift off this ball. Now, what you might have to look at is before you look at dropping the mast, just check to see if the mast needs to come down pointing in line with the boat or rotated all the way around to 90 degrees. I think it's probably going to be a straight back on the getaway, but certainly on a Tiger, which has got a similar system, or a Pacific, you do have to rotate it to 90 degrees before you can drop it. If yeah, so you'll just need to have a look at that and see how it all lines up. And then even with this bolt in the bottom, I would certainly, when you're going to drop the mast, if you've got 3 people, including yourself, now that is ideal. this is how I would go about doing it, is we have this guy who stands at the mast foot. His name is going to be Mast Foot Mick. This is standard. So we'll just draw in a bit of the boat. Okay, so his job is to firstly to release the forestay and then to go to the mast foot before the mast starts coming down, and just applying pressure to the bottom of the mast foot just to really make sure that that can't jump off there. If you're sailing, if you've got a boat which has got a very secure mast foot system, then of course you can, sorry, I've just lost a bit of light, which was, there we go. Then you don't necessarily need to have someone there. Like, for example, if you've got like a mast hinge, like we've been using on the 16, then you wouldn't need somebody there. But if you don't have that, then yes, get someone at the mast base holding the mast. Then the third person, or let's do the second person first. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Standing on the trampoline, holding the mast. And then this is the guy who's going to be actually lowering it down. And then the third person is going to be in front of the boat, which you can't actually see. It's right over here. And then he could take one or two of the trapeze lines, preferably one trapeze line from either side in front of the boat. This really is the easiest way to do this. And then forestay gets taken off by Mick. Mick moves to the mast base. Trampoline Ted is on the trampoline. He says, ready. And then trapeze wire Tom can then release a bit of the pressure. Mast will start to come back down. And when it gets to the point where he can't really do much with the trapeze lines, he could come round to the back, ready to catch the tip. And of course, to put it back up, the opposite of that process. Okay, so with the replacing of the mast base, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. All you need to do is do it. It will be held in probably by 4 pop rivets, which you just need to drill those bad boys out. Try not to drill the holes where those rivets go any bigger. So just drill the heads off those rivets. And then I would usually use like a punch and a hammer just to bang the rest of that rivet through. Once you've got those off, you can take the base out, have a look inside the bottom of the mast. There should be, inside the mast, there should be like a foam plug, which sits like here on the inside. So that is so that if water does get in here, it's not going to flood the whole of the mast. So just check that that plug's looking all right, but there's no reason why it shouldn't. Yeah, then clean it up inside, get your new mast base, slot him in, and then put a bit, I would put a bead of some sort of sealant around where the mast base is going in, just really to try not to have that leak at all. And then you can re-rivet it. If you have got, if you can get hold of rivets, which are I think they just call them waterproof rivets, then use those, and then you're good to go. New mast base, lovely. We're actually going to be replacing some mast bases here at Wildwind, so stay tuned and you might see some of that. So I hope that's helpful, Damien, in answering your question. All right, Chris says, oh, this is on the dyneema trapeze lines, and Chris knows more about dyneema than I do, that's for sure. The dyneema has become good enough over the years with their UV coatings that you won't have an issue. Look for major fuzzies on the line to know if you have to replace them. There you go. All right. Nice one, Patrick. Nice one, Chris. All right. And then we've got Kizopi. Maybe spam. More spam has been appearing throughout. All right. Max says, don't forget the like button. Oh, I'll never forget the like button. Thanks, Max. All right. We've got Bobby on board. Hi, Bobby. First time caller, I believe. What is the best place to get almost new sales for a 16? I'm in Erie, Pennsylvania. I would say if you want almost new sales for a 16, there's two ways you could go about it. Do you want original Hobie sails on your boat, which you will need if you're going to be doing any class racing? Or if you're not going to be doing any class racing, then you could get somebody else to make you a new set of sails, which will be significantly less expensive than getting new sails from Hobie, but you wouldn't be able to do any class racing with them. Bobby says for racing, then in that case, I would speak to your, if you go on the Hobie website, in fact, it should give you a whole better, worse. It should give you a whole map of the country and where all of the dealers are, all of the Hobie dealers are for the whole country. And I would start just either emailing or phoning around all the Hobie dealers for the USA, obviously starting with the ones that are closer to you and then going further afield and seeing if anybody has any used or ex-demo sales that they are selling. Because what we do here at Wildwind is when we're buying new sales, like last year we got new sales for all of our 16s, I'll go to Hobie Cat Europe and say, have you got any ex-demo sales? And usually they'll say, yes, we've got some which have been used in a competition or they were made for an event or something like that. And they'll usually be about 20%, maybe a bit more cheaper than going and getting a brand new set of Zephyrs, which look very nice, but they will set you back a bit. So that is what I would say. And then Chris is in there with the Beach Cats forum is a good place to find used sales. Yeah, of course, all of your usual sources of the Hobie Cat forum as well on the Hobie website, Craigslist, eBay, things like that. Anywhere, just look everywhere. That's what I would do anyway. All right, Chris confirms that with the dropping of the mast on a getaway, it is straight back. All right, then we have got Zergoth33, who asks or says, my Hobie Tiger collects more than a cup of water every sailing session. I've replaced the porthole covers, let's call them hatch covers, with new 4200. But that must be the model. Where else am I getting water inside? Maybe the deck panels. Yeah, I think it's fairly unlikely to be the deck panels. The most likely sources of leaking on any type of boat is going to be any of the fittings that are, if it's leaking when you're not capsizing or when it's not particularly windy, then it's going to be any of the fittings that sit underwater or that are underwater some of the time. So they would be like on a Tiger or any Hobie, they would be your, I don't have to draw this, your bung housing, the bung itself, and the gudgeons for the rudders, because the lower part of those gudgeons are going to be under the water. Oh, marine sealant. Okay, thank you. Yes, sorry, he's replaced the hatch covers with new marine sealant. So the hatches are definitely not the source of the leak. There we go. Yeah, I would take the same marine sealant and perhaps maybe take out the bung fittings and the gudgeons for the rudders, take them off, clean it all up, and then put on some new sealant there, put those back in. But before you do that, one place where boats have been known to leak, and apologies if you've heard this before, is where the bung goes in. If your bung is quite worn, like if you've had your boat on a sandy beach at all, and when you're putting the bung in, there might be a bit of sand on the thread, that thread can get diminished over time, which means that it's no longer going to be quite as waterproof. Also, the rubber seal on the bung needs to be in good condition as well. So hopefully it would be as simple as that. So perhaps before taking the fittings off, I would take a look at taking those, having a look at your bungs and the seals on the bungs, replace them if necessary, in you go. But then if it's only leaking when you're capsizing, or if it's like if you've been capsized, there's a lot of water inside, then even if you have resealed your hatches, the hatches do have a breather hole in the middle, so some water can go in through those. And then also water could get in through where the holes bolt to the beams. There's quite a few places where it could leak. Now, here we go. I've just spotted that Hobie Cat says, bit of science here, bit of testing. Take a bellows or some sort of pump air into the holes with soap around all the places where it could be leaking and look for bubbles. So there are quite a few things there, but I don't think it's the deck panels. The daggerboard cases as well, that can be a place where cracks start appearing. So put the boat on its side, or when it's up on the trolley, have a look underneath and see what your daggerboard housings cases are looking like. All right, thanks very much for the question. All right, we are at 42 minutes and a half. We're just going to take a short commercial break for everyone who's watching later. Of course, a strong one today. All right. Hobie Cat says stainless steel rivets. There we go. And actually with if you're using stainless steel rivets with your aluminium mast, you do need to use some sort of barrier cream to stop this electrolysis kind of thing that happens between the stainless and the aluminium. So just get some of this paste and you just put it on, and that means that's not going to be an issue. There we go. All right. We've got Lee on board. Hi, Lee. Great to have you with us. Oh, we've got Jake Oddmonic. Good morning. All right. Just reading through the live chat here. Toots on board. He says, what did I miss? We talked about how not to capsize, how not to stick the nose in, where to get your sails from. And this was how to drop the mast on your boat, how to replace the mast foot. And there were some other bits in there as well, I'm sure. All right, we got Pedro there in Chile. Hi, great to have you on board. I'd like to know, is it better in a regatta with 2-meter waves in a lake on a Prindle 18-2, which is like a tornado hose, in a beam reach, stay back and fly over, or in the middle and true? I think just make sure you're not going to stick the nose in. Always, because if you're racing or any type of sailing, there's always going to be a kind of balance between going really fast, but how much is that going to increase the risk of you capsizing? So if you're racing in heavy conditions and there's a good chance if you make it around the course without capsizing, you're going to do pretty well, then take the safer approach. But if it's not like that sort of conditions, if it's a bit less and you feel that you can handle it, then stay back, double trapeze, and absolutely give it some juice. I think that is what I would opt for. Oh, there we go. Mark says used sales in the US, check Facebook Marketplace as well. Good point. Keep forgetting about Facebook Marketplace. I do check it myself from time to time. All right. Zirgoff 33, daggerboard trunks would be impossible to fix without a hinge, without a huge mess. Sorry. Yeah, that would be quite a challenge, unfortunately. Chris says Prindle and Nacra boats over time do leak from the deck plates. All right. Toot says elevator music playing. All right. That must have been when I was doing the rundown. Pedro, who was just asking about this beam reaching. In the middle, sometimes both hulls were under the water and felt how the cat gets slow over in the third jump, gets slow too. Both situations, she in and out. Yeah, I think, yeah, it's a tough one. If you're going across the waves, let's see. As you all will probably know, talking about sailing in waves, not my strongest point because I haven't really done it for probably about 25 years now. But if this is the waves like this, then generally your wind direction would be like this. So if you are beam reaching, you'd be kind of going this way. In which case, I would certainly, if it's not capsizing conditions, I would certainly be looking at sailing the boat pretty much like we usually do in the flat water. But if you do feel that your ability to stay attached to the boat might be an issue, then perhaps the helm on the boat should sit on the trampoline, crew out on the trapeze. And then to get the most out of the situation, you want to be just reaching along the top of the wave. And then when you're ready for it, just bear down the face of the wave a little bit to pick up some more speed. And then just see if you can link a few waves up so that you can do that as much as possible without having to sail uphill as much. That's what I'd be looking for. Yeah, sorry, I haven't got more to give you on that one. All right. All right, Hobie Cat, that's Ollie, I think, says use polyurethanes for the pop steel rivets because polyurethanes are weather resistant. Right, I might have to look that up. That sounds quite interesting, actually. All right, there's just a bit of chat going on. Chris says on the Prindle, it tends to hobby horse, like rock, I should think, into the wind with chop. Keep the weight forwards across the wind, get it back and haul butt. There we go. All right, I hope everyone's having a lovely time. I have got some more preloaded questions, which I must address. So the next one is from Gustavo, who we saw on Show Us Your Cat in Puerto Rico. And he's talking about tacking with waves, which, would you believe it, we've actually got some waves already here. So how to do more effective tacks when there are waves. Now, I do remember this from when I used to sail in waves off the east coast of England. There is a bit more timing involved with when to initiate your tack. So if these lines represent the top of the wave, so the wave's got a top and a bottom. So this would be the bottom here, which we could call the trough. This would be the top, which we could call the crest. So you'll be sailing in this direction. The time to initiate the tack is just when the bow of the boat is poking over the top, because at that point, you've got the smallest amount of, so if this is an exaggeration of the wave, yeah, it's going to be quite a fun sail if we're out in this. So as you're coming up, yeah, this is definitely going to be a fun sail. Just as the front of the boat is coming out of the water at the top of the wave, or more likely it's going to be a bit flatter, then you've got a lot less resistance from the hulls because you've only got half of the boat in the water. So there you can, that's when you should push the bows through the wind, and then you'll go on to the other tack just down the back of the wave. If you did try to initiate the tack when you're in the trough, then you're much more likely to stall, because all of this water moving is trying to restrict the amount that you can turn up into the wind. Not only that, it's actually you're actually going to be starting to climb uphill, which means you're going to be digging the bows in more, which is going to make it more difficult to turn the boat. So it's a timing thing. Wait to go out of the top of the wave, just at the top, and then put the boat through the wind there. There you go. All right, no further questions, please, in the live chat. Just because we are coming up to an hour now, and that is as much time as we've got. All right, so the next question is from Jisnu, who I believe is in Australia, could it be? Who's asking about traveler settings for downwind on the trapeze. All right, so this is much like what we talked about before, and on the downwind point of sail, this is getting a bit faint actually, isn't it, the green? Let's yeah, so on the downwind, what we want to be able to do, it doesn't really matter if you're on the trapeze or not, but when you're on the trapeze, you will be able to have more power on. You're going to be sailing a lot faster. You want to have the traveler set in a position, like there's not a, this is the position. It's like you want to have it in a position where in the lulls, you're able to get the main sheet in tight, and then in the gusts, letting it out a bit. So by having the traveler out more, it means we can sail with a tighter main sheet, which is going to give us a lot more control when sailing at these sort of speeds, which we're going to be getting if we are if we're trapezing downwind. So it's pretty, I think it's pretty straightforward. Just if you can't sheet the mainsail in at all tight, then let the traveler out a bit more and then sheet the main sheet from that position. So there you go. I hope that helps. Just new. All right, now we have got Enrico, who says, how do you control sail shape and sail regulation on a boomless boat? mainly in broad reach conditions. I understood that it's better to control with the traveler and using it also to ease the power over gusts instead of the main sheet. However, I went out today in 20 knots and sail control was horrible. All right, so we're just going to talk a little bit about boomless sails. So the most famous boat to not have a boom, I would say, is the Dart 18. And all sails that don't have a boom, they need to have one thing in common, which is, right, I'm just going to draw a picture here actually. There's our boat. There's the mast. I think you could probably work that out. And there's the sail. All right, and then we'd probably have a batten just there. All right, lovely. Nice. Okay. It's a pretty good picture for me, I think. All right, so what we have to have if we've got a boat without a boom is the angle from where the main sheet is pulling has got to be further back. So you'll see on a Dart 18 or a Hobie Dragoon without a boom, or any boat without the boom that is designed not to have the boom, the back beam is going to be further back than the clew of the sail. Because if the clew of the sail is too far back, what's going to happen is all of that pull is just going to go into the leech of the sail, the back edge, and the foot of the sail is going to have an absolutely disgraceful, out of control curve to it, because we're not putting any tension into the foot of the sail. Oh, there we go. Ryan says the Nacra 500 as well. So what we're doing here is we're pulling, it's probably about 70% leech, 30% foot. So we are pulling some tension into the foot of the sail, which is putting, keeping that under control and stopping us from getting this out of control curve. Like if anybody tried to sail a Hobie 16 without a boom with the normal sail, it would be absolutely horrendous. So let's not even try that, not with the standard sail. And then what to do with the traveler and the main sheet, like we've said, is we are going to use the traveler for the point of sail and for the general wind strength, but then we are going to be playing the main sheet from that position. So it's kind of like if you look at your traveler as gears, and then the main sheet is your gas. So you're either pulling it in or letting it out to control the power at the time, whereas the traveler is giving you the angle of attack of the sail. So there we go. Let the traveler out to a point where it's comfortable to play the main sheet from there, but you're definitely using the main sheet to do most of your like gust response, power control, that kind of thing. All right, what's going on in the chat? All right, I think there's been a bit of some of this stuff going on. All right. All right, so Ryan says, I'm fixing up the Prindle 16 that's damaged in the storm. Really want to fabricate wings for it. What can I expect from wings on 16? Can anybody get open source design? I emailed Vic, but Vic didn't respond. Oh my word. All right, if you send me an email, Ryan, I'll to remind me, I'll get in touch with Vic as well, and I'm sure he will respond, because I think Vic's design for the wings on the Prindle 16 did look very good. All right, Carl. Hey, oh, this is a bit of bit of chat between yourselves. That's fine. That's what we're here for. All right, I'm just scrolling through. Don't need to read everything. Hi, Robin. How are you doing? Great to have you with us. All right, Ryan says there is an adjustment plate on the leech to adjust the angle. Yeah, so when we've got a boomless design, although the back to the Dart 18 just has a single hole on the clue, whereas a lot of the more modern designs will have some sort of plate, which if this is the corner of the sail, the plate might actually come down a little bit, and there might be 3 different holes where you can hook your main sheet into. The further forwards one is going to allow the leech of the mainsail to open more and close the foot, which you'd think that's going to work well if it's really windy, but it might not so much. You still want to have that control over the leech. Usually the middle hole is the one, but it will differ from boat to boat. All right, so on to the next preloaded question. This is from Joy to Sail, who I believe I got this one from Instagram. That's right, I'm on Instagram as well. Yeah, it's very popular with the young people. Yeah, so he says, I have difficulty in hoisting the spinnaker whilst on the helm. Yeah, it is a bit of a, I've got my hands full. What am I going to do here? So, and in fact, it's more difficult when you're sailing single-handed, dropping the spinnaker and helming at the same time. That's more difficult than the actual hoisting. So what I would do is the first thing, before you go to hoist the spinnaker, turn the boat onto your downwind course, get everything else set up. So get the main sheet in the right position. Anything else, make sure if you've got dagger boards, those are lifted, that kind of thing. Because once your spinnaker's up, then you want to be really paying attention just to controlling the spinnaker, steering the boat, and just keeping everything under control there. All right. So once you've turned the boat onto the downwind course, go a little bit deeper than you would do if you were sailing with a crew, which means if you're sailing with a crew, you'd be, if it was a moderate wind, on a regular kind of broad reach. But if you're sailing alone, I would go almost onto a run before hoisting the spinnaker, because when you're on this point of sail, there's a lot less pull in the rudders, which is going to try to bring the boat up into the wind. And what we're trying to do is stay on this course while we're hoisting. Get on this course, and then what I would generally do is kind of sit a little bit on the tiller extension to hold it in a straight line where you can lift the cheek, adjust, replace, and there you are. And then hoist as quickly as you can. That is all that you can do. And then the same thing goes for the drop as well. So when you come to dropping the spinnaker, what you could do is, again, turn the boat really deep downwind, get a cheek, or I've seen it in, if people are kneeling on the trampoline, to actually put the tiller extension kind of under the back of the leg if you're kneeling, and sort of gripping it there. And then when you're dropping it, what you can do is, as soon as the spinnaker starts going into the chute, that is when you know the spinnaker isn't going to go into the water. So at that point, that's the point when you can next grab the stick, give it a tweak. If your course is coming a little bit off, then pull it down a bit more. But certainly dropping the spinnaker when you're solo in 25 knots of wind is no picnic, that's for sure. So in answer to your question, generally Yes, it is difficult, but you just have to adapt, set everything up, get the boat really deep downwind before you hoist. And just really think, do I want to hoist this bad boy in the first place? Because it is a lot of commitment hoisting a spinnaker solo, especially if there's a heavy wind. All right, there we go. All right, we've got a question from Team Marty, who says, this is a really good question, by the way. They're looking at planning a holiday. Where would you recommend a family sailing location where kids can do sailing and parents can do some sailing too? Well, it's funny you should ask, but there's this place in Greece called Wild Wind Sailing Holidays. The website address is wildwind.co.uk. It is a British-run company, and what we're doing is sailing holidays where we're doing the complete package, depending on where you're coming from, but we organise the flights, the accommodation, and as much sailing as you or your kids want. We do have what we call a kids club during the school holidays, where all the kids would be in a group, and then they go off and do their own sailing, which leaves you to go off and do your own sailing as well. We have instruction for all the different levels of ability. In the mornings, we have lighter winds, so very good for really tweaking your technique, perhaps trying a different type of boat, or doing some very focused training. And then in the afternoons, we get these strong winds, usually about 25 knots, where you can go out and go very fast and have a lovely time if you want to. Or you could read a book by the pool, very popular as well. All right. All right, I've got Mike on board. Hi, Mike. Have you ever seen or sailed with the South African built Hellcat compares with the Hobie 14? No, I've never seen one, and thus I've never sailed one. But yes, there's so many different boats, which, especially in this sort of 14, 15 feet long kind of arena, which I think all of them were probably loosely based on the Hobie 14, because that was the first of these kind of surf cats to come along. But yeah, I'm coming down to South Africa in a couple of weeks, so I'll keep my eyes peeled for one. All right. Mike says, my question to you is, how do you align your rudders if everything was replaced? The tiller arms is not adjustable. Oh, if you've not got an adjustable tiller arm, well, if the tiller arm's not adjustable, then that's not the issue. It is the tiller connecting bar that you do need to have a bit of adjustment on. If you don't have any adjustment on the tiller connecting bar, that would generally mean that the manufacturer of the boat was that confident that they'd built it perfectly. You shouldn't need any adjustment. But when we're looking at the adjustment of the rudders, no further questions, by the way, in the live chat. Still got a few. In fact, I've got one really juicy. You're going to like this final question after we've talked about the rudders. It's a very good one. So what I would do, the simple way to have a look at your rudders is, right, here is your catamaran. And then we'll do the rudders in another color to make it a bit clear what's rudder and what's hull. I think that's a good idea. So these are the rudders. So we're just going to be very generally speaking here. So firstly, important that you've got, before you start looking at the rudders, that you have got the rig tension on, especially on a boat which has got this kind of like similar to the Hobie 14 method of putting it together where it's a little bit loose between the hulls. If it's a fairly tightly built boat like an F-18, then it's not such an issue. But on a flexible, let's call it a flexible boat, you need to have the rig tension on. So if your rig is tensioned on the jib, you want to put the jib up, crank it on, because that's actually going to pull the bows of the boat in a little bit, which will affect what you're looking at here. So once you've got the boat set up, especially with a smaller boat, a 14, what you want to do is stand behind the boat, look along the rudder blade, and you want it to be dead straight up the boat. And then the other one, so when you're going to look at the other one, you do need to make sure that they're not both going to move. So you do have to somehow lock it in position or get someone to hold it so that it's in the same position. Look at the other one, and it wants to be dead straight, or if not dead straight. So when you look along it, it could be just in a little bit. So just in from dead straight. And that is kind of the sweet spot for the rudders, between dead straight and just a few, like a degree in. The way that we look at the rudders on the F-18s is where the bow fitting is. We want to, when we line it up by sight, we want that line to come just to the inside of the hull where the bow fitting is on the boat there. So that is how I would look at the rudders. All right, what else we got? Sounds like super fun with joyrides, with Joyrider in Greece. It certainly is super fun out here in the summer, that's for sure. Carl's here. Hey, Carl. Been lurking on your channel for Do you mean lurking, or do you actually mean looking? I prefer it if you do mean lurking. For info on renovating an older Hobie 16. Great info on rigging. Great. I'm glad that you are finding what you're looking for. I haven't done that much on renovating older boats just because it's not something that I've done. But if you do check, there are some episodes of Show Us Your Cat where people have done these pretty major refurbishments of older boats. And I think you could get a lot out of those, in fact. Okay, so last preloaded question, and this is about the topic of the comp tip mast on the Hobie 16. This is from Mark, who says, are there any significant differences between the Hobie 16 mast types? I have an old I've had a non-comp tip mast for 15 years, just acquired a complete boat which has got a comp tip mast. What are the differences? Sorry about the light. It's just this screen is a dark one. All right. So I didn't know much about the comp tip mast, apart from the fact that the comp tip masts on Hobie 16s were introduced in the early to mid 80s, basically with the because it was required to make the boat safer when handling on the beach, so that if the mast came into contact with power lines, you were less likely to get a shock, come down the to get electrocuted off power lines when your mast hits them. Always look up, by the way. It's a good tip for that. Let's all right, so I got in touch with Rich, who was here earlier from the international. Rich is the president of the International Hobie Class Association, and asked him what he said about the comp tip masts. And he says the following. He says, from the sailing point of view, most people will notice no difference between the two types of mast. The top end of the racing fleet will notice some slight differences, but I find it is very easy to switch when using a different type of mast, which would usually happen going to a Worlds or a Europeans. So it's going to help with the reading. Yeah, so Rich saying he doesn't find much difference between the two masts. The weight of the two types of mast is about the same. But then he says the comp tip mast is perhaps a bit more flexible than the solid mast. In fact, at this point, for those of you who don't know what I'm on about, the comp tip mast is, here's the mast. Sorry, it's a bit dark. And then the top section of the mast is made of fiberglass. And then the rest is made of aluminium as normal. So it's like a two-piece mast. This would be just above the hounds where the rigging attaches. So there's your rigging attachment. And then you've got this composite top section, which is not going to conduct electricity if you strike a power line or are out in a thunderstorm. He says, we think the comp tip mast bends off a bit more in really strong wind, which flattens the top of the sail, but not a massively significant difference. Some people think the comp tip is faster in strong wind, but Rich says it's the skill of the crew and not the mast. All right, so the top part of the mast is going to bend a bit more, which is going to help to flatten the top of the sail. So there is going to be a bit of a difference there. I try to be mindful of sheet tension in light to moderate winds, as I think you can more easily oversheet the solid mast. So that means with the comp tip mast, you can sheet in a bit more in the lighter winds without such a risk of oversheeting, because that top section of mast is going to bend more. At World Championships, we tend to use a little bit more mast rake with a solid mast versus the aluminium. By putting a bit more mast rake on, it reduces the risk of oversheeting. The biggest differences between the two are storage and maintenance. The comp tip is a polyester resin, and like any fiberglass product, it is susceptible to UV damage. Hobie Cat recommends keeping them covered when you're not using them, which they actually sell a cover, probably expensive. If they're stored in the sun for a long time, they'll get chalky and the fibers of the cloth will eventually show. And they recommend fixing this with light sanding and then painting it to keep it UV resistant. The other issue with the comp tip is the track section of the comp tip is made of plastic and can be damaged if not properly securing trailering. But the track section is replaceable if it does get damaged. All right, so there we go. That is quite a lot about the comp tip mast. So with the comp tip, you can sheet in a bit more without the risk of oversheeting. I'd say surely you'll be able to get a bit more downhaul on, I'd have thought. But there you go. I hope that is helpful. All right, I'm just going to... All right, so there we go. Yes, we've reached the finish line. So thanks to everybody for tuning in today. It's been an absolutely fantastic session. Don't forget to hit the like button before you go. And I haven't got anything planned for this weekend, videos wise, but yeah, it's unlikely, in fact, that I'm going to be doing anything for this weekend. Got a pretty full schedule, but thanks for watching, and thanks to everybody for tuning in. And very informative. It was that Mark who asked. There we go. Yeah, all right then. See you soon with some more on Joyrider TV. Thank you very much.